right, New Fire Rising here, and we're going to do things a little bit different this week for this week's review. We're doing Limbo, but I am actually here with Katie to do a little Q&A. Katie actually played the game. Katie is not a gamer. She doesn't play games really ever, and so we're going to go with what Katie thinks you should know about Limbo. Katie, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Awesome. All right. Katie, why don't you start off by telling us what is Limbo?
Limbo is... They don't really give you a whole bunch of introduction. It just... All of a sudden, you're in this gray world. Everything is shades of gray. And you just kind of wake up and start moving. It's a game full of puzzles that you have to figure out. The only way you figure out the controls are if you go to the menu and hit controls. There's the joystick. A makes you jump and B pushes things when necessary or makes you climb or whatever. But besides that, you figure it all out as you go.
Okay. So essentially Limbo is a puzzle/strategy 2D platformer, is what it would be called in the gamer lingo sort of idea. But essentially you will play a kid who wakes up in a nightmare, and you have to find your way out of the nightmare. Did you kind of get the feeling of that from the game?
Yeah, kind of. Everything was pretty nightmarish, including large, terrifying spiders.
Okay.
They were kind of awful.
How about the difficulty? How difficult was the game?
It wasn't too difficult. There were some puzzles that were more difficult than others, just because, like I said, there's very little explanation to it, so you just got to figure it out. And a lot of them, I mean, you can figure them out, but some of them just take a lot more trial and error than others do.
Okay. Lots of dying, I noticed.
Yes, lots of dying.
Some of them can't be avoided, though. You basically die, and that's how you figure out not to die.
Yeah. Because you have to... The first time something happens to you, you're just walking along, and then suddenly something happens and you die, and you don't expect it. And you're like, oh, apparently I have to figure out how to avoid this.
About how many times would you say you died in the few hours, rather, you played the game?
Altogether?
Yeah, just rough estimate.
Like 50.
Okay. You mentioned the controls. I was actually going to ask you about that. The controls are pretty simple, right?
Yes.
We did look them up in the settings menu, but overall, you didn't really need to. You kind of figured it out on your own.
Yeah. The only one that really it was useful to help you figure out was that B would help you push things or pull things when necessary.
Yeah. So essentially, you got three controls. You move the left joystick to move the character left or right, and then A is jump, and then B is to interact with stuff. And that was the gist of it, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Did you enjoy the game?
Most of the time, it got kind of frustrating after a while when you just keep dying and dying and dying.
Did you ever feel that the frustration or the dying was the game's fault or your own?
Well, I like to blame the game, but it was probably my own. So it was, yeah, just more. It was me.
Well, the main reason I ask is because there's some games where, for example, if you push A and you're like, I swear I pushed A, I know I pushed A, and he didn't freaking jump, versus I just didn't do it right.
Yeah, he usually was pretty good about listening to your commands. Sometimes when you would jump, he would have a little bit of like a little second hop if you jumped too far or too hard or whatever. And sometimes that kind of messed you up because you would jump right where you needed to be and he'd take another little hop right into death's way.
Okay, but overall, the controls didn't really get in the way or anything like that.
Nope.
Okay, and you did enjoy the game, minus the frustration of dying.
Whenever you figured them out, it was quite enjoyable, especially when you got to kill spiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this game to others?
Yeah, I think so. If you enjoy puzzle games, then yes. If you're one who likes shooting games with lots of fancy moves and stuff, not so much.
Okay. As far as content in the game goes, if this was a parent's buying the game for their kid, perhaps?
Well, like we've said, it's full of death, and it's very dark. I was going to say a little dark, but it's very dark. Very morbid. Very Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, okay. So, other than a dark atmosphere, I noticed there's, lots of dying, spiders, kind of just spookiness in general. Maybe creepiness is a word I think you used at one point.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's no language. There's no talking in the game at all.
Yeah, there's no language. Even the deaths, while some of the deaths are a bit morbid, there's no blood really or gore. So.
Okay, so basically, there's dismemberment. I noticed one time or a few times he'd get caught in a bear trap and his body would go to pieces. But
yep.
Not really in a, like you said, gory way, but just kind of like a doll almost coming apart.
Yeah.
Okay. Overall, how would you rate the game? On a scale from 1 to 10.
I'd say 7.
7? 7 out of 10.
Yeah, 6.5, 7.
Okay. What were some pros in the game that you liked?
It was surprising in a good way because you never knew exactly when some of your challenges were going to come, especially when it was something new that you hadn't experienced before. Like there was, well, I won't give away.
Yeah, you don't want to give away some of the puzzles, but just an example, maybe.
Well, even the first time that you come across a puzzle, you're just walking along, nothing's happened, and all of a sudden your first one comes and you're like, oh, I died. And then it takes you back and you have to figure out, okay, why did this happen and how do I fix it?
Okay, so the sudden and inevitable deaths were a pro to you. It was just kind of surprising to see it happen, and then it was kind of a unique way of showing you what not to do.
Exactly. So it was kind of creative, I'd say, in that sense. And I like the simplicity of it. Not a lot of background graphics or, side missions or anything like that. It's just very, very straightforward, very go left or go right, jump, figure out how to beat this puzzle.
Overall, simple mechanics, just figuring it out.
Exactly. And they weren't so difficult that they were impossible, but some of them were, relatively difficult to figure out. So It wasn't super easy.
So that's a pro for a puzzle game, though. I mean, you have some that are simple, but then some people who like puzzle games, they wouldn't want something that was so simple that they
breeze right through
it. So would you say there was a healthy level of challenge?
Yes.
Okay. What about cons? I know with you said the controls were good. You liked the simplicity of the graphics and the gameplay. Was there anything specifically while you were playing that you thought, this is frustrating, I don't like this, this is bad?
Not really bad.
Well, dying, I mean, you died a lot, you said. But that's not necessarily... Well, I mean, as far as the con and playing the game, that's what we're talking about. Just anything you didn't like would be a con in the game. Dying over and over is part of the game and can be considered a con if you get frustrated easily, but overall was just part of the experience, right?
Right.
So you don't really have much bad to say about the game.
Right. You could most things were, you could figure out pretty easily. A couple of them I had to have some help from some bystanders.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the extent of the cons in this game, in your opinion, is simply it can get frustrating from dying a lot, if it's a more difficult puzzle, for example, and it can be creepy and dark. So that's about the extent of the cons in this game?
Yeah, pretty much.
Or the negatives, rather. Okay, is there anything else you can think of if you were trying to tell somebody whether or not they should play this game? Is there anything that you think they should know? That's kind of the title of these videos, is what you should know about Limbo in this case. So is there anything that you think our viewers should know?
I think we've covered most of it. It's a pretty straightforward puzzle game. Like I said, it's kind of dark, so, you know, if you don't like you don't like your kids watching death a lot, you probably shouldn't get this game for them. But, and, you know, it's a nightmarish type of game, so it's kind of dark and creepy, but it's fun. And sometimes it's pretty entertaining, especially the surprise deaths when they catch you off guard and you're just like, oh, okay, well then, there you go.
Well, good. Well, overall, it sounds like it was a great game. 7 out of 10 is what Katie ranked it. And overall, that's what we should know. It is an arcade game, so you can't pick up a physical copy in store. However, if you bring in your used games and the games that you no longer want or no longer need or don't ever play, bring them into Grumpy Bob's Emporium and trade them in for some in-store credit or some cash, rather, and then go ahead and buy this arcade game on Xbox One, Xbox 360, and I think it's on other platforms as well. I feel kind of, I should have looked that up beforehand. We played it on Xbox One. It's for sure on 360 and Xbox One, and I'm pretty sure it's also on PlayStation. And I know you can get it for PC as well. But yeah, anyway, so that's I'm New Fire Rising with Katie here, and that's what we think you should know about Limbo, or at least what Katie does. Make sure, like I said, come to Grumpy's Bob. The holiday season is coming up. Trade in your used games. Check out what else we have in the store. There's all sorts of new titles, and we'll see you next time.